Good morning. Today we are starting our book 3. That's going to take us through our third trimester. Our next unit that we are doing is going to be working with the angles and triangles and different shapes and how we figure out those measurements. Today's is CO51. I can measure, draw, and classify angles using a protractor. So you will see on your page there is a picture of the protractor, and I gave out protractors, classroom supply protractors that we're just going to use in class. We are not going to be goofy with them because we don't want them breaking. These are my class supplies, okay, so we need to be careful with them. We're going to go over how to use them. If you are gone a day from school and you need a protractor, you don't have your own at home with me, you'll have to wait until you come back to school to borrow one. So we're going to leave them in the classroom. All right, so below is a picture of a protractor. Notice how it measures from 0 degrees to 180 degrees in both directions. So we see the 0 on the outside starts here, and the numbers get bigger going from the left to the right. But we see the numbers, the 0 on the inside, going from right to left on the inside, going from the smallest to the biggest, 0 to 180 degrees. This is because angles can be facing either way. So it depends on the direction of your angle if we're going to use the outside numbers or the inside numbers. What number do you think we always want to start with when we are measuring an angle? James? The 0. So we're always going to want to start with that 0 degrees. So we need to look to see which way our angle is going as to if we use the inside angles or the outside angles. So if we were to use, I have a big protractor so we can all see it. If we were to use our protractor to measure this top angle here, do you think we're going to use the inside or the outside? So let me show you how we use that. So in mine, I have a little divot here that I'm going to put the corner of my angle. In yours, you're going to have that little circle. So you're going to line your protractor up with that angle being in the circle. And you're going to want that line going straight. So for me, we can see I have my angle, that tip of the angle right here, and that line is going straight across. So it looks a little goofy when I do it on the board. For you, you have that circle in the middle, and then you can see that line going straight across that goes through your circle. You want to make sure the line on the paper lines right up with that line of the angle. So the line on your protractor lines up with the line on your paper. So we don't want to match up that angle and then put our protractor like that and say, well, I had my circle in the middle of the protractor, because it's not really, right? That straight line doesn't match up with this straight line. You have to match them up so the line goes with the line. So if we look at this first one, when we put our protractor on the angle, I want you to see this line right here. We are going to go straight across till we get to the 0. So is that 0 on the inside or the outside of the protractor? It's on the outside. So that means we are going to measure around the protractor. My calibration's off when I'm trying to put the protractor on here. So I have to lift it up a little bit. So we are going to follow around that protractor to where this line, if we extend it up, we can see how many degrees it would be. So extend this line up to the outside number, because we're following the outside of our protractor, going from 0 all the way up. How many degrees do you think this angle is, Lila? So if I'm looking at mine, it looks more like, for mine, it looks more like 115 degrees if I have that straight line going across. Here's the thing with protractors. Sometimes it gets a little wiggly and we're not entirely sure. Let me borrow, it's hard for me to do it on the board with it. Let me look at it this way. It actually, Lila, I would say doing it on the paper, it's hard with me with this big one. Doing it on the paper, I think you're right. I think it's more of 120 on the paper. So me trying to do it with the big one, I get off a little bit. When we are measuring with protractors, I do not expect us to be 100% precise. You can be off by a couple degrees, but you can't be off by a lot of degrees. So we wouldn't look at this and say, oh, that's 100 degrees, because that would be off by a lot. We have to try to be as close as we can to the actual degree. So we have to really go slow and think about it and make sure we're lining everything up. So if we look at the bottom angle, how many degrees would that one be? First thing we have to do is we have to line this bottom line, put that circle, it's called the vertex. We're going to talk about our different vocab words in a minute, but we're going to put that point of the angle, the vertex of the angle, put it in the circle, and line your line up. Is our 0 on the inside or the outside of the protractor when we do this angle? Yeah, it's on the inside. So when we line it up, that angle is pointing towards the inside where that 0 is. So we're going to follow up the inside of our protractor to where this angle comes up. How many degrees do you think that would be, Lila? Yeah, let me borrow yours. So we need to line it up like this and make sure the line underneath follows that line. That line up to, yep, it looks like 60 degrees. We have to follow that top line up to where it hits the inside of the protractor. So the key that what we are doing when we're working with the protractors is you always have to look at this bottom line and see which way, if you continue that bottom line, which way does it hit the 0? Is it the inside or the outside? If it hits the 0 on the inside, you follow those inside numbers up until you hit the top line of your angle. If it hits it on the outside, you follow those numbers up on the outside until it hits that top of the angle. Yes?
When we put the circle, do we have to use a line to draw the line?
The line is already on the paper. So what I would do is use the bottom of your protractor as like a ruler to draw your straight line over. And then put the protractor on it. Because you're right, that line is in the middle of that plastic bar of the protractor. So I would just use that protractor to draw a straight line going in both, draw both lines going up. So do that and then put the protractor on it. All right, so let's look at our vocab words. I've already used the word vertex angle. So vertex is the point where the sides of the angle meet. So that vertex is that tip of the angle right there that you're putting your protractor over. The little open circle on the protractor you put right over the vertex. You line up the line on your protractor coming out of that circle to line up directly over that bottom line of your angle. Our first angle type is an angle that measures less than 90 degrees is an acute angle. I like to think of it as the little angles are just so cute. They're just cute and little. So that's the acute angle, or the cute little ones. They are less than 90 degrees. So this angle that we measured to be 60 degrees would be acute. It's nice and little. If we were to draw an example, we would want it to be less than 90 degrees. If it is a 90 degrees, it goes straight up and straight across. That would be 90 degrees. So acute is going to be smaller than that. So it's cute and little. Then we have a right angle. A right angle is an angle. Anybody know what its measurement is going to be? Liam? Yeah, it's going to be exactly 90 degrees. So an angle with a measure of 90 degrees. So when we are doing measurements, we are putting that degree symbol in there. We're not doing temperature degrees with Fahrenheit and Celsius. It's just degrees because it's an angle measurement. So a right angle is an angle with a measure of exactly 90 degrees. So that means we have a going straight up, straight across. Sometimes you'll see a little box in the corner. When you see that box in the corner, you know it's automatically 90 degrees. They don't write 90 degrees, they just write a little box, and we know that's what its measurement is. So it goes straight up and straight across. When you measure it, the lines line up for it to be 90 degrees. And sometimes we see that little box indicating it is definitely 90 degrees. Any questions on those two angles? All right, so we have acute is less than 90. And then we have the right angle, which is exactly 90. And now we have an obtuse angle. Any guess on what the definition of an obtuse angle is? Sarah? Yeah, it's an angle with a measure greater than 90 degrees. Now we know there's the bottom of our angle. If it goes straight up, we know that's going to be 90. So obtuse means that other line of our angle is bigger than that 90 degrees. So acute is cute and little. Obtuse is bigger than 90. The right angle is exactly 90. Now we have a straight angle. Any guess on that one? Lila? Ooh, good guess, but it's not 0, because that would just be a dot. And we have lines. Okay, so if we have one line here, the other line is not right on top of it. Well, that was a great guess. It is an angle with a measure of what any other guesses. So an angle with a measure of exactly 180 degrees. So if 90 degrees was going straight up, another 90 degrees puts us going straight across. So a straight angle is a straight line. So the straight angle looks like a straight line. It's just that measurement, that vertex is in the middle of our line. So we can see 90 degrees on one side, 90 degrees on the other side, and 90 plus 90 equals 180 degrees. So those are our 4 main angles that we are working with. Acute, little less than 90. The right angle, exactly 90. Obtuse is greater than 90. And the straight angle, which is a straight line of 180 degrees. So now let's look at our second page. Our first page was really about learning how to use that protractor and our angles. And we've got more practice measuring with our protractor. To measure an angle with the protractor, like we worked on the other page, you line up that vertex with the circle, and then you make that line of the angle go right across that line on your protractor. So right now I want everybody to line up your protractor. Let's look at this angle first up here. Line up your protractor. You want to make sure the bottom of the angle is flat along the bottom of the protractor. So when you see that line on that bottom part of your protractor, line that line up with this bottom part of the angle. Yes, Carol? Okay. So what Kellen is noticing is his binder page, that the ring of the binder is getting in his way. What do you think we need to do if that binder ring is in our way? What would be a good choice? Lexi? Take the page out carefully, because we're going to be putting it back in so we don't lose it. So if that ring is in the way of measuring, take it out. And now line up your circle with your protractor. Yep. Make sure the line on the protractor goes right over the line on the angle. Look at where that 0 is. It's pointing to the 0 on the outside of our protractor. So we're going to be using the numbers on the outside of the protractor. We're going to extend the top line of the angle up. So as we're counting up, we know where to stop for our angle measurement. So you should be getting about 45 degrees for your measurement. So if you come, you have to come to the outside, and that's where your 45 is. So you've moved on. Let me see you measure this one. Yeah. Yeah. We're doing that very top angle right now. So we haven't started on the work on the bottom yet. So Emerald, that top angle is where we're getting that 45 degrees. Adeline? On the protractor? Oh, I want you to find it on your protractor. So yeah, the numbers on the, so let's look can see if you're. So we're going to line it up right there. And then click it out. It looks like it's just a so if you get something like 47 degrees, am I going to call it wrong if I call it 45? No, because remember I said it can be off by a couple of degrees. That's close, okay? We're not going with exact, we're going with really close. If you got 55 degrees, would I call it okay? No, because that's too far off. So we want to make sure we're getting as precise as we can, but it's okay if it's off by a couple of degrees.
So we use the outside number to
It depends on which direction your angle is pointing. For this angle, it's pointing to the outside 0. So we use the outside. But if I scroll up and look at this angle, which way is it going to be pointing towards? Which 0? The inside. So when you line it up, your vertex to the circle, line up your lines, this one is pointing the other direction. It is pointing to the inside 0, so you're going to use the numbers on the inside. And you're going to write what degree you think that one is. And there is one more step. It says classify. So what do you think, what degree do you think that angle is? Aiden? Aiden's thinking 50 degrees. That's really close to the one I had. I had 47 degrees. Yeah. So somewhere in there. Now I need to classify it. So remember we had our 4 angle types on the first page. What would I classify this as, Nolan? It's acute. It is less than 90 degrees. So I'm going to write acute. So I marked my angle measurement, and then I classified it. So you have 3 more angles to measure on top and classify. And then on the bottom, it says using your protractor, draw a 30-degree angle and a 110-degree angle. Watch what we're going to do to draw an angle. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my vertex, and I'm going to use that protractor as a ruler and draw a straight line. Now I'm going to put my protractor on it and say, okay, I want it to be 30 degrees. I see right up here is my 30 degrees. And I'm going to draw a little dot where the 30 degrees was. What do you think my last step is going to be? That line? Yeah, I'm going to draw that top line. The dot where 30 degrees was, and I'm going to connect it to the vertex. Your way of checking to make sure that you're using the correct side of the protractor is to think to yourself, always go back and think, 30 degrees, that's going to be an acute angle. It needs to be small, less than 90 degrees. If I used the wrong 30, if I used the outside 30, and I connected that dot to my vertex, that's going to be a really big angle. I know I used the wrong side of my protractor. So always look, is it supposed to be acute or obtuse? Did I draw it correctly? So because we're drawing 2 angles here, I want you to label that 30 degrees right there. If you put the degree inside the angle, we know that's the measurement of this angle. So I know that's your 30-degree angle. Now you have to do the same thing for 110 degrees. Do a dot for your vertex, do a straight line on the bottom of the angle, then put your protractor on it, find your 110 degrees, line it up with your vertex and draw your line, and label the 110 degrees. And make sure it's obtuse, because 110 is bigger than 90 degrees. Does that make sense? Any questions? So I'm going to let you figure out how to use those protractors. If you are not sure if you're measuring it correctly, come up and check with me. Okay? So this is the time for us to play with that protractor, make sure we are measuring the correct way. If you are watching this at home and you do not have a protractor, make sure you check in with me tomorrow to get that protractor so you can work on this page. Not every page in this unit needs a protractor, so that's why I don't give them for us to keep for the unit, because we don't use it every time. I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.